Good evening. A very warm welcome to this international roundtable on India-Kuwait relations and mutual humanitarian cooperation organized by Tillotoma Foundation. Tillotoma Foundation is a global think tank working in the areas of international relations, area studies, financial, environmental, legal, scientific, strategic, and defense policy. India and Kuwait have a special relationship which is manifested in the strong mutual humanitarian cooperation between India and Kuwait in these challenging times when the whole world is battling with COVID-19. This international roundtable on India-Kuwait relations and mutual humanitarian cooperation, organized by Tillotoma Foundation, will discuss these issues at length. The keynote address at this roundtable will be delivered by His Excellency Mr. Jasem Ibrahim J.M. Al Najem, Ambassador of Kuwait to India. It is a real pleasure to have you among us. The other distinguished speaker at this roundtable are Ambassador Ajampur R. Ghanshyam, former Indian Ambassador and Joint Secretary Gulf, Dr. Meena Singh Roy, Head Western Central Asia Center, Tillotoma Foundation, Dr. Wail Awad, Distinguished Advisor, West Asia, Tillotoma Foundation, Professor A.K. Pasha, Professor JNU, New Delhi. I thank our friends from the media and all the viewers for being here with us. Let me now request His Excellency, Mr. Jasem Ibrahim J.M. Al Najem, Ambassador of Kuwait to India, to kindly deliver the keynote address at this roundtable.
First of all, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to participate in this international roundtable about Kuwait and India and humanitarian issues and all bilateral fields. Of course, to start with, during the current situation, state of Kuwait, the head of the state, His Highness the Emir, the government and the people stand in solidarity with the government of India and the friendly people. And of course, India always the first to support other countries. And I can mention that last year during the first days of pandemic, India sent a medical team actually to Kuwait from the army, and then we received the first vaccines, which is almost 200,000 doses regarding the COVAX initiative. So India always there with the pandemic at the first days, and now I believe it's the time for Kuwait and other countries in this international society or the whole global to be with India. And we started actually with the a cabinet statement that expressed its deep concern and also developed a precise plan for supplying especially oxygen, the liquid medical oxygen. And of course, we established a sea bridge and airlift altogether works to provide the supplies, the emergency supplies and the aid under the guidance of His Highness the Emir of State of Kuwait. Maybe I can mention in a brief that Air Force plane actually landed in India in Indira Gandhi airport. That was 4th of May, carrying 40 tons of supplies. It was like 282 cylinders or oxygen cylinders and 60 oxygen concentrators and other stuff like medicine and ventilators. And then after a week or week later, the Navy ships start to arrive in Mangalore port in Karnataka state, and of course another commercial ship that carrying amount of 215 metric tons of oxygen or liquid medical oxygen. This is we name it, or we say phase one, and now another Navy ships on the way to other ports in India for carrying amount of 210 metric tons to reach the total amount of 1,400 metric tons of medical oxygen, or they call it, liquid medical oxygen, and amount of 3,000 cylinders of oxygen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I believe, Yani, we are talking about the humanitarian actually supplies that came from Kuwait, and we can continue. We give the doctors and other participation for questions, or we can give them the role also to talk, if you allow me.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your remarks and the keynote address at this roundtable. And we are so grateful to Kuwait for all the supplies and the assistance that we have received from Kuwait and the mutual humanitarian cooperation. At this stage, let me now request Dr. Wael Awad, a distinguished advisor for West Asia to the Tillotoma Foundation, to make his remarks.
Thank you, Soham. Thank you, Excellency. Thank you for all the distinguished guests on the panel and to everybody watching. Actually, when I wanted to talk about the Kuwait-India relationship, I just want everyone to visit the Kuwait embassy to learn about the contemporary history, post-independent of Kuwait, and then how the relation has been fostering between the two nations throughout the years. In fact, you will see a gallery of pictures of different Indian leaders who have visited, or the leaders from Kuwait who have visited even India during the early years of 1961, independent of Kuwait. Having said that, I would say that the relation between the two countries never been so short, but it has been deep in the history. In fact, you will be surprised that Kuwait was one of the major supplier of the coffee, of the stones, of the pearls, of the sandalwood, of the lots of the even the wood, saj we call it wood, which has been used to build the ship and some furnitures in the palaces and also ships in the sea. And all this Kuwait was supplying throughout the history of its relation with India directly, because that is the Kuwaiti known for their shipping, shipping activities throughout their history, and therefore with the seaside, and they have been collecting all the pearls, the natural resources, and they have been traveling all the way to India and bringing from India all the silk and the other masala and peppers from India, which have come in a large supply. And during those years, in fact, Kuwait have been playing a major role in this also in between the two countries. And after that, because of it is small size, and because of it is wealth, and because of it is importance, Kuwait was subjected to lots of piracy, lots of attack, and have been throughout history till the East Company and the British colonial British have taken full custody of the Gulf country, and Kuwait was one of the major country which used to be called Kurt, and that is one of, like, it is a city in India which we call it Calicut or Calicut, when it was called earlier the years of Kuwait. So that show you the deep relation between the two countries. And in fact, you will be also surprised to know that even the Indian currency was till 1961, it was in the Kuwaiti market and it was dealt with. And even if you speak Hindi, you will be also able to communicate with the Arab in the country and also the expats who have been living there. Kuwait also is hosting the largest number of Indian expats. In fact, it is the largest community even inside Kuwait is the Indian diaspora, who have been living there for decades. They have been well respected, doing very good work in the construction, in the infrastructures, in also running offices and companies, which have been doing very good business in India. And in the trade relation have been growing so fast between the two countries. I think till we have seen also the cultural relation between the two countries also over the years have grown, especially with opening of the Arab Cultural Center, and Kuwait have discovered the oil and that oil discovery and natural resources made also Kuwait one of the leading country of supplying oil and the petrochemical to India, and where they always have seen India as the destination for the for investing in different fields in India. And I think the investment project for Kuwait in the trade relation between the two countries was something that exceeded more than $4 billion. But I think there are many projects on the pipelines where the Kuwaiti also willing to enter into India to invest in the infrastructure and also in the project of Make in India, where they have been growing. And I think the Excellency, ever since he had come, has been very active in this field. And I have seen most of the meeting and the officials. But the COVID-19 have also given a new color to a new dimension to this relation, have shown the humanitarian faces of this and the bonds between the two nations. In fact, Indian, as the ambassador was saying, was the first country to send a medical team, full equipped medical team, to help the Kuwaitis, small, tiny, with large number of expats which have been affected by the COVID-19. But I think in reply, Kuwait was very quick to reply, and I could see all the posting of Excellency throughout his activity to prove that Kuwait is looking for a good relation with India. And I'm sure the Gulf division in India recognize this, as much as the Indian ambassadors in Kuwait have also acknowledged the contribution from Kuwait. Not only Kuwait, and I'm talking in particular Kuwait here because we are talking India-Kuwait, but let me put two, 3 points before I close my remarks on the other dimension of the Gulf countries. The Gulf country as a whole also plays a major role in strengthening and cementing the relation with India. We have more than 8 million Indian expats living in the Gulf. We have more than 14 million prior to COVID-19.
I think we have some.
Yeah.
We lost your audio in between.
I'm sorry. I was just saying 8 million people we had from Kuwait. We had in the Gulf country 8 million Indians. We had more than 14 million Indian annually visit the place. And we have the largest trade relation between, I think the third largest business trader is with Kuwait and the Gulf country with India, because GCC is one body which has trying to promote this relation. So I think in all aspects, Kuwait is taking a lead role in strengthening the relation, and also in the international arena. And most of the international affairs and regional affairs, they have been very common and mutual sharing and cooperation and mutual point of view regarding to many issues regarding the tranquility and stability in the Persian Gulf, and also in the GCC country, and along with the Middle East and West Asian affairs. I think I will stop here, and I will leave this thing for the question and answer. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Awad, for your remarks. I think we can now have Ambassador Ajampur R. Ghanashyam, former Indian Ambassador and Joint Secretary Gulf. If your connection is working, can you start the video?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
I seem to have a problem with my camera, so I'm just going to speak. I
sure.
The other participants will not mind. Now, many years ago, I had occasion to have accompanying our foreign minister to Saudi Arabia. And Prince Turki bin Faisal was the foreign minister at that time, and our foreign minister was Salman Khurshid. So at that time, when we were sitting at a lunch, Prince Turki al Faisal narrated a small story about two Saudi young men who were from the same school. After the school, they went their own ways, and they met after 30 years. One of them had become very rich and famous, and another one had become a senior bureaucrat within the government of Saudi Arabia. And when they met, the one who had done professionally well, but financially not all that well, he asked his friend, who had done exceedingly well, "What is the secret of your success?" And the gentleman said, don't make mistakes. That is success. It will lead you to success. Then he said, how do we make sure that we don't make mistakes? And he said, that is very simple. You get and gain experience. The next question again was, how do you gain experience? And Turkiya bin Faisal said, make mistakes. That's the story of the Arab intellect. Now, what I want to tell you about Kuwait is, because it's very easy to talk about the past and enjoy the glory of our relationship. So I am going to make my presentation in 3 small capsules. The first one is a background, and the second one is our issues with Kuwait, and the third one is a couple of proposals for the future. Since the ambassador is here, I thought I will get his attention to convey this. The background. Now, the area of Kuwait is a very small country according to many people. Its area is 17,818 square kilometers. That is about the size of now a small Indian state called Nagaland. To make it more easy to understand, it is 1/4 of the national capital region of New Delhi. That's the size of Kuwait. Now think of the population, 4.5 million people. That's about the population of Kuwait. And it works out to about 0.32% of India's population. So the area is 0.5% and the population is 0.3%. Now look at the GDP, $135 billion of GDP of Kuwait. It's about 4.5% of India's GDP in nominal terms. And in purchase power parity terms, it is 3%, $303 billion, which is 3% of $10.2 trillion of Indian economy. So although it is a small country which accounts for less than 0.5% of the Indian geography and works and accounts for 0.3% of the population of India, it is 4.5% of the GDP of India. And the per capita income of Kuwait is $28,200 nominal, and India's is 2,200. That's a huge difference. And in terms of purchase power parity, India's GDP is $7,300 per head, and Kuwait's is 68,000. That is the background that I wanted to give. It's very nice to talk about great things that we have done in the past. And looking at Kuwait, it has come through an extraordinary phase of history. Most of us think of Middle East from the beginning of the oil discovery, but the Al Sabah family has been managing the state of Kuwait from the year of the Lord 1756. That's 1 1 year before the independence of the United States of America. So it's an experienced and ancestral family. And in 1899, they decided to become British protectorate simply to avoid the Ottoman Empire coming and swallowing them. That's a very smart decision to have been made by Kuwait at that time. 1937, they discovered oil. 1951, they built their infrastructure. 1961, they became independent. In the sense that when they were a British protectorate, they had everything in their hands except foreign policy. And once they became independent, the foreign policy also became part of us. That is about the background that I would like to give about Kuwait. Now, what are the issues of concern to us? That's the second capsule that I'm talking about. If you look at the population of Kuwait, it's about 4.5 million. 30% of it is native, and 70% of it is expatriate. And Indians, the numbers vary, and I have seen figures which vary from about 1 million to 1.4 million. That is the Indian population. And 30% of 4.2 is just about the same population. The population of Indians seems to be the same as the population of Kuwaitis in Kuwait. That is very unusual. a large large section of the Kuwaiti population is Indian. Now, it is understandable that all countries would like to give all the jobs to their own nationals. It is understandable that the benefits of growth of this development goes to their own citizens. And in that pursuit, the government has made its own intentions very clear. The National Assembly has said that we must convert 30% of the population of Kuwait into 70% of the population of Kuwait. How do you do that? You cannot increase the number of Kuwaitis suddenly from 1.3 to 3.5. It's not possible. So you reduce the number of expatriates who are there. So if you have to reduce the number of expatriates who account for about 3.2 million people, out of which almost half of them are Indian, then it will have an impact on India, because these are expatriates which have been remitting something like $5 billion remittances to India. But this is something which we are prepared to accept, because as nations develop, this will happen. And the Saudi Arabia started the process of Nitakat about 9 or 10 years ago, and population settled itself and adjusted itself, and things do happen. This is something which both countries would have to look out for. That is one thing which I would like the ambassador also to take a look at. And the second issue of concern is natural, but it is also inevitable. You have a trade deficit which is huge. Out of the trade of $8 billion, nearly $7.6 billion is exports from Kuwait to India, imports from India to Kuwait, and about $1.3 billion is what India exports. This is not likely to be bridged so very soon, because as long as oil is the biggest export from Kuwait and India continues to need oil, that trade gap will remain. That is another issue which we can certainly address, but it's a long-term issue. Now, the last capsule that I want to talk about is what is it in it for our bilateral relationship in the future. The first thing that I want to talk about is Kuwait has the resources. The Kuwait Investment Authority is supposed to be the 5th largest sovereign fund with about $535 billion in stock today. And they have also invested significant amounts in India, something like $2 billion or more they have invested in India. The proposal that I have in my capsule is, if we can join hands between Kuwait and India for picking up projects not just in our own countries, India and Kuwait, but in third countries. India has the experience of doing it with Japan in Africa. We could think of discussing this with the finances from is both our countries have bureaucracy have two export processing zones, one in Kuwait and one in India, which will be managed by India and Kuwait by maybe a group of businessmen from Kuwait and a group of businessmen from India, maybe put together as a small task force to work on this proposal of one EPZ in Kuwait and one EPZ in India. This is the other proposal that I had. I think I'll stop at this because I have taken, I think, more time than I thought I would, and leave it to your audience. I'm sorry about not being able to come on camera because then there seems to be an issue with my camera or my software or my ability to handle my software.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kanashyam, for your excellent address. You addressed and outlined the whole bilateral cooperation and also suggested for future growth. Thank you so much. I think I will now request Dr. Beena Singh Roy to make her presentation. Dr. Singh Roy, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm very much here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we cannot see you. Would you like to do it through audio?
No, wait. Can you see me?
No, no, we can only hear you.
Okay.
We can
I
see
hope
you.
I'm visible.
Yes, yes, yes. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Soham. Good evening, Excellency. Good evening, Ambassador Ghanshyam, and thank you, Dr. Vailavad and Professor Pasha, for being part of this group. I think much has been said about India-Kuwait relations, the historical bond that we have shared. And I think when we are talking about, the countries in the Gulf, two countries figure out very prominently for me, especially when I'm looking. There's a very, very strong relationship that we've talked about with GCC countries, but the two countries that I feel need to be more looked at, and we need to talk more about the relationship, is Oman and Kuwait. And I think this is where I feel the need is for more such dialogues. The need is for more communication between track 1.5, track 2, and any kind of an association that we can think of. When we are looking at the existing, push that has been given by the present government for the new West Asia policy that we talk about. And the first point that I would say, there have been, VIP visits, from both sides to all the West Asian countries. But I think now, there is a need on part of the government, and especially, I would urge that even it is a time for Prime Minister Modi to visit Kuwait. Now, given the situation that we are in today, I'm sure this is something which is being worked out, and I'm very hopeful that in future there would be visit from India, and especially from the Prime Minister Modi, to Kuwait. That is one point. Ambassador Ghanshyam has, noted, a lot of points at now, many issues that he's highlighted. And let me say, when we are looking at the future cooperation and the way forward, there are three areas that I would probably look at. One is the, at a strategic level, what should we be doing? The second is the economic leg of the cooperation, which is very strong, but there are still many areas where we can look at. And the third dimension, I would, whether we call it soft power, or where we call, the cultural cooperation and the connect. These are the three areas that I would like to focus. Let us look at the strategic dimension of it. The geographical positioning of Kuwait is such that strategically it is an extremely important country where we need to push our cooperation in whether we're talking about the maritime cooperation, the security dialogues. Yes, there is an ongoing, security dialogue which is happening at the NSA level, but I think there is a need for a certain momentum and the continuity of this. And this security dialogue I'm talking about, this could be done at a track 1, which is happening, but it can also be done at the institutional levels in various, sort of institutions, and that could give a certain push to it. So I would probably suggest that we need to have one security dialogue, a strategic dialogue at track 2 level, with certain workshops identifying particular areas, be it training, be it maritime cooperation, be it annual exercises. I think this part of our relationship can be strengthened in future, given the geopolitical changes which are happening, given the requirement of the security cooperation in the maritime area which is happening. And you see the strong relationship that we can. I mean, there are many commonalities when we are talking about India and Kuwait, and even Kuwait has an image of bringing various factions together. A very I would say a kind of a democracy that we see in a sense that there are those elements, the secular fabric, which I can foresee coming in, and it is existing there also. We have different ethnic people there, and Mr. Awad has pointed out those various dimensions, and so have Ambassador Ghanshyam, the number of people who are there, and there is a kind of a synergy, there is a kind of cooperation. You don't see that threat in those ethnic groups. So what I feel, these are some kind of a similarity which bring, India and Kuwait working together when we are talking about the larger Gulf security issues. And this is something, I have been from track 2 for a very long time. And I do feel, track 2 can be built to track 1.5, and it can go to, of course, track 1, whatever happens. But at the same time, some new ideas, some new issues can always be debated when you have the younger people, the professionals, coming into it. Now, let me come to the second part of it, the economic leg, of which, we have a strong, economic cooperation going on. There are issues which Ambassador Ghanshyam has pointed out. But in this, I think, the private sector especially can do much more than, what the government sectors can do. And this is where I think, the business forums, need to be, even if it is 6 monthly, dialogue, which can be initiated. Would a business council is there? I mean, I'm saying whatever is there is existing, but it is for us. How do we move forward with a greater momentum to ensure that it becomes much more meaningful in a real sense? And this is where I think, CIA, FICCI, and these are the, institution where, the expertise is there when we're talking about the economic cooperation, the trade. And I'm sure, there can be a better, cooperation on when we talk about the investments. It could be, Ambassador Ghanshyam has already pointed out about the cooperation in some third country. And I think the agriculture, the food security is going to be a key question. The water management, the water security, and the food security are the areas of future. And this is where I think, we need to work together bilaterally, regionally, and trilaterally or quadrilaterally. This is an area where, India and, the Gulf partners and, of course, the bilateral working groups can really meet much more frequently and see how these studies can be done. And here, what I'm referring to is the 2 experts from both the countries can work together on a smaller projects that can be provided to the ministries to take a small projects which can be much more fruitful in those areas. So I think agriculture and health sector, we see how world is struggling to manage the most unpredictable epidemic that we see today. There are different theories, whether it was predictable, not predictable, but the fact today is that we need the smaller countries to help the bigger countries. We need the bigger countries to help the smaller countries. And I think in Asia, the next decade is definitely going to be dominated by the Asian players. And therefore, few areas that I would say the health sector and the disaster management, food and water security, these are the 4 areas where I think we need to focus more, whether we talk about the bilateral cooperation, whether we talk about the regional, and whether we talk about the international cooperation. But when we see the Asian dimension of it, these sectors would be key for us to think and work forward. the third aspect that normally we talk of soft power here. And when I'm saying soft power, I'm not excluding the women from it, because the role of women is a very, very important factor that starts from home and it goes on to the country and beyond. And therefore I would say the younger women who are in the universities, they need to interact more. There could be a women forum or a dialogue, whatever we could term it, anything, but there should be more women delegation visiting each other when the situation gets better. And even on I would say, when we are meeting on platforms like this, the interaction between the women is something which is very, very important, for the countries. Let us also look at the part which we call, the tourism. Now, tourism is something which really, I know it is an industry which is not working at this stage, but we are talking about the future, and I'm sure things would get better. And there are many young people in India I know of who want to go camping in desert. Now, the experience that they have, in desert is something in a country like Kuwait or Oman is something which people would love to do it, the adventure that is required. So I think the more information needs to be generated, publicly through social media, through otherwise. And, this is one sector where there is potential when we're talking about future. And the third is the cultural aspect of the cultural, sort of festivals that can be done, when we are talking about India-Kuwait relations. So these are few points that I thought I would say. And one more, being a woman, the gems and the jewelries always attract you. But let me tell you, this is one sector where, we could think of joint ventures. And I do feel, the people can be trained here in India, in Surat, in Jaipur. There are various areas, and those are the areas which would bring some kind of a better ties that we are looking for. And there is, the Kuwait has money to invest, and so, as I said, it has to be a joint work. And lastly, one point that I would like to highlight here is the interaction between the young parliamentarians. This is something which needs to be taken up. Here they should be sitting and understanding, about each other's political system, learning from each other, sharing the experience. And there should be, young parliamentarians who should visit each other, on a regular basis. And training programs, technology, space, these are n number of areas. The expertise and the services that India can provide is immense. The potential is immense. And I think the private sector needs to get attracted towards these areas. And that can be done through more such information sharing, creating such dialogues in India and in Kuwait. And I think that is probably going to take our relationship forward. And I'm going to stop here. And I'm sure, we need to have such interactions more. And since we have the representative who can communicate in a better way to the government, we would welcome any comments and any sort of view that he would like to convey back to us. Thank you very much, Soham, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Meena Singh Roy, for your comments. Now we request Professor A.K. Pasha, professor from JNU New Delhi, to make his remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Soham. Excellency, Dr. Wailawad, Dr. Meena Singh, it's a pleasure to see all of you on this show. Ambassador, you have taken a very noble initiative to communicate the efforts made by Kuwait to help India during this very challenging period of this pandemic, which has affected a large number of Indians, and the timely humanitarian help. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
The timely humanitarian help rendered by Kuwait, I think, is well known to millions of Indians who have seen through the videos the material being loaded at Kuwait and the planes landing at Delhi and other places, and also the huge ship carrying oxygen cylinders leaving Shuaik port in Kuwait. That was a morale booster for many millions of Indians who needed oxygen and critical material while combating the COVID situation, which has taken very serious turn in the second wave. Kuwait's help is timely, and although Kuwait also is affected by COVID-19, but I think this gesture will remain embedded in the bilateral relations for a long, long time. This is not the first time Kuwait has helped India and the Indians to tide over the difficult situation. There have been many other occasions, without going into the details. During the Gujarat earthquake and tsunami, also Kuwait took the initiative to help India in a very crucial manner. And Kuwait has been well known for helping at the critical stages whenever India needed help. The first I recall is during the 1962 India-China war, when the Amir sided with India and rendered all help to the Indian government, placing on record the new state Kuwait coming to the rescue of India. Because Kuwait got independence only in June 1961, when it had to face a challenge from neighboring Iraq, which claimed Kuwait as part of its territory. I must remind here the viewers that India was the first Asian and non-Western country to recognize the independence on 19th of June 1961. And since then, the bond between the two countries has grown stronger and stronger. In fact, the credit for Kuwait as a tiny state in the northeastern part of Arabian Peninsula as a democratic oasis goes to the credit of the far-sighted leadership of the Al Sabah family, who have steered Kuwait with the written constitution, elected National Assembly, and periodic elections. You know, many Kuwaitis used to come to India to study in Mumbai and Pune and other places, and they saw through the press how democracy has been functioning even before India got independence. So after the Indian independence, the Indian working system impacted, and Kuwait was the first Gulf monarchy to opt for a written constitution and elected assembly, which has been functioning, which is the hallmark of participatory democracy for the Kuwaiti people in a big way. Secondly, although Mrs. Gandhi was the first prime minister to visit in 1980, after nearly 20 years of Kuwait's independence, the political relations have been more or less stable, except during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, which was very unfortunate, but both the countries tided over the situation, and relations became normal. And the testimony for this is the return of hundreds and thousands of Indian workers soon after the liberation of Kuwait in February 1991. In fact, the Kuwaiti Amir, the late Amir, who was the foreign minister then, paid a visit and thanked India for the return of the workers and their critical role in the rebuilding of the Kuwaiti infrastructure, which has been the prime importance for many of the Indians in all of these places. Kuwait, as many of us know, is a small country strategically located, rich in oil, but it is surrounded by neighbors who try to influence its domestic or foreign policy. But the wise leadership of the Al Sabahs, by following very noble foreign policy, they have steered the country through very many crises and taken upon the leadership role. Kuwait, as you all know, is well known for its dinar diplomacy through the Kuwaiti Fund for Development. It has projects all over the world. And India also has immensely benefited from the Kuwaiti fund in critical infrastructure, whether it is hydroelectric power or pharmaceutical or railways or many other critical sectors which Kuwait has given loans, soft loans at low interest rate, and that has helped a lot. And Kuwait has been a regular and trusted and reliable supplier of crude oil, especially not only crude oil, but also refined petroleum products, whether it is kerosene or diesel. In fact, in 1990, India was the largest importer of kerosene and diesel from Kuwait. And also, Kuwait's role in India's food security is very critical because we import large quantities of chemical fertilizers. So, Kuwait has been a partner in India's economic development from the very beginning of its independence. For the last 60 years, I don't recall any incident where there have been differences between the two countries. I can only talk about cooperation in trade, commerce, and in many other issues, especially because Kuwait has taken interest in mediating in conflicts in the region and beyond. And India has always welcomed the role of Kuwait in many of the hotspots which have affected security and stability, which is of prime importance to India's own economic development and vision of a world free from violence and other issue. Kuwait also has taken a very noble stand on the Arab-Israeli conflict, of which in all Indian prime ministers have admired the courage, the stand taken at international forums, at the non-aligned summit, and even at the Arab League, and so on and so forth. So in that way, Kuwait and its diplomacy and its active role, its democracy, its bilateral aid, and its role in the international arena, not just at the United Nations or Arab League or NAM or the OIC, but also at the Asian level. The former Amir took the initiative to bring all the Asian countries together and work for cooperation. A summit was held sometime back in Kuwait, bringing all the Asian leaders to Kuwait to see how best they would cooperate. So the far-sighted policy of humanitarian aid is just one aspect of an activist role Kuwait has been playing in the international arena, but a very quiet, unassuming role, unlike the other countries who make a lot of propaganda. But Kuwait, as an honest member of the international community, has been seriously and steadily and consistently helping countries, especially its friends, because I see Kuwait as a friend of India on great many occasions, not just the aid from the Kuwaiti fund, but also in critical situations. India has sought the advice of the Kuwaiti because of their experience, not only in the Gulf matters, but also in the broader West Asian and global issues. They work quietly behind the scene and have proved to be very effective in diplomatic circles. And it is well known that Indian and Kuwaiti delegations work very closely at the United Nations at the Non-Aligned Summit and many other international forums, especially at Geneva, where I have seen the delegations interacting on several drafts, etc., etc. Lastly, I would like to mention that the Kuwaiti assistance, which has been coming for the last couple of days, is available on videos. The millions, the hundreds and thousands of Indians who are there have been capturing every minute of the assistance which has been coming from Kuwait, and all the Indian associations, over 100 of them. If you see their websites, they are proud that where they work in Kuwait, the leadership has taken the initiative to come to India's rescue at this critical junction. So this gesture would remain embedded in the memory of hundreds and thousands of Indians, and I thank the wise leadership of the Al Sabahs, especially the Amir and the foreign minister, through the ambassador, they have rendered to India. I must also acknowledge that a lot of Indians, not only those who are working there or who have worked there, admire silently the democratic structures which have been established there, and the relatively free press which translates the debate and discussion in the National Assembly, which is available to many Indians very same evening when it takes place. It is a matter of pride for many Indians that Kuwait, despite very difficult neighborhood circumstances, especially after the Arab Spring, has been able to not only retain, but also sustain its democratic structure, especially the National Assembly, where very fruitful discussion takes place between the members, the ministers. Of course, sometimes it is difficult question-answer session, but that is the beauty of democracy. That is the beauty of participatory involvement of people. I think I'll stop here, and I thank the Tillotoma Foundation and the ambassador for this interaction.
Thank you so much, Professor Pasha, for your remarks. I thank all the speakers and Your Excellency for being here with us. Now I request Your Excellency to kindly make your response. There have been numerous suggestions, comments.
Yeah. If you allow me here, first of all, thank you all, dear distinguished guests, for all this wonderful things, and I started with the humanitarian cooperation, which is one of a glory side or field between both countries, and I let the rest of the information about the relation between Kuwait and India. Let me add and comment about some of those. Of course, next year we are going to celebrate 60 years, 60 years, establishing the diplomatic and political, relation. Of course, our historic relation back to 150, 120 years back, So during this time, this 60 years, of course, a lot of things happened, and a lot of successful, journey and achievement. But we can also, do our best to strengthen this relation. And I found one of the most important things between both sides is that the benefit supposed to go for both sides. It's hard, to think only for your own benefits, either in trade or business, economic. So His Excellency Mr. Ganasham, of course, thank you for all the information. But we need to, I will not say correct some information, but let me, mention in another way. For example, some statistics and figures, we need to update it. When we talk about the population and the Indian citizen in Kuwait, they reached recently to 1 million, exactly 1 million. And the number was increased, fast last 5 years, which is good, actually. And they are most welcome in their country, actually. We are all yani together for build Kuwait, and of course, the benefit for India also for that. As Dr. Wael mentioned, around 9 or maybe 10 millions, Indian citizen, the population, I mean, for Indian citizen and the Gulf. And of course, it's the benefit for both countries, for our countries and also for Indian citizen who transfer, amount of like $40 billion a year. So when we are talking about things, it's hard to only think one side. It's the benefit for both sides, Kuwait and India, and both friendly people, of course. When we mention about the balance and trade, Kuwait is really one of the source of crude oil to India and one of source for secure the energy to India. We export like 200,000 barrel a day, which is 10% of what we produce, and the amount is like 5 billion a year. In regard of what, of course, we import petrochemical from the refinery in India. So it's kind of the benefit for both sides. We cannot just mention one side benefit. When you talk about Kuwait Investment Authority, the number is not 4 billion, it's 5 billion. And we are looking forward to increase that investment and, in different fields, actually, in real estate and energy. We are investing in Reliance company, private sector, public sector, all actually, and even with the infrastructure, projects. So we are together, and I prefer that word. We are together here. We cannot just check, one side benefit than the others. His point of view about the joint investment in another country. That proposal was being discussed during the visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs from India, the former minister Sushma Swaraj, and we are working on that absolutely. Both Kuwaiti and Indian investment to invest in another country, could be Far East, could be South Asia, could be Eastern Europe. So yeah, absolutely, we are together. And I prefer actually from both sides to see the benefits from both. And of course, any other proposal is welcomed. We are here to think, I believe, different a little bit. What we can add. It's very important to think out of the box. Sometimes only to establish, for example, or held a forum will not take you to the end of the story. Of course, we were thinking of those forums, but before the pandemic, now it's hard. We could think about virtual actually forums between Chamber of Commerce and Industry, between investment authorities in both countries. So I believe we are on the right track. We are on the right way. The last visit of Kuwaiti Minister of Foreign Affairs to India, actually, the final, or let's say the joint statement between both countries was establishing or to establish a joint commission, held soon in Kuwait for other, joint working groups in all fields: trade, business, energy, science, culture. So I believe we did well, the whole efforts last 60 years, and we are going, of course, to strengthen this relation, especially when you talk about food security. We talked, of course, about energy, security, and of course with the all information and science field about the cyber, security. Also, it's kind of let's say a field that we can also establish a good relation with India. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your remarks. I think we have come to the end of this international roundtable on India-Kuwait relations. Dr. Awad, if you want to make. Yeah.
I think there are a couple of questions, Excellency, from our colleagues who are wanted to know the amount, thank you, Osman, the amount of Kuwait contributed so far in terms of the humanitarian, especially on the gas, which you are saying, and what is the next ship is coming? Can we have little light, because you open bridge between India and Kuwait? Can you just elaborate a bit, please, on this before?
Yeah, of course. Actually, we established like a sea bridge. This sea bridge is going to transfer amount of 1,400 liquid medical oxygen. This is, the target. And we already sent 215 metric tons of that liquid medical oxygen, and 215 again, another, we name it phase 1. So 215 already delivered to India with 2,600 oxygen cylinders. We call it this phase 1. Phase 2 now, again, almost the same amount of 210 metric tons and around 1,200 oxygen cylinders. Now, this sea bridge and also airlift is going to be like this. Kuwait produce, oxygen because of the, oil industry and petrochemical. So we have the capability to produce like 200 metric tons a day. And we always export this material to neighbors, to Iraq, to Jordan, and many other neighbors. So there was an idea with this capability of producing, oxygen, we can transfer it to India. And the idea is to transfer it with the ISO tank, the huge tanks that takes like 20 tons or maybe 25 metric tons, and then bring the empty tanks to Kuwait with the Air Force, with Indian Air Force, to refill it with oxygen and take it back with either Indian Navy ships or with commercial ships. So it's a continuous actually process. Will continue for next month, and we will hear about Indian Navy ships arrive to Mangalore, for example, or to Mumbai, to Gujarat, and again another commercial ships. This is the first actually sea bridge, and as I mentioned before, Air Force carried 40 tons of Red Crescent Society supplies. And I just heard that also the private sector, Kuwaiti private sector, we have Kuwait, actually, petroleum company, donate just now amount of $100,000 to buy, the oxygen concentrators. And this is only a small amount because the Ministry of Social Affairs, actually, and Labor in Kuwait are going to establish or inaugurate a campaign to contribute, as a stand of solidarity with India. But the recently the situation in the Middle East maybe make it a little bit backward, but it will back soon next week. So we are together, because this is not something strange for Kuwait and even for India. As I mentioned before, actually the whole health sector in Kuwait, either the private or the public sectors, we are, depends on the Indian, actually, doctors, nurses, and technicians. So we are together all the time, and a crucial time, and also in peace. We are looking actually forward for a new era. I'm totally, glad to be here with you to hear about those proposals. It's very important, and I think we need to have more this roundtable to find or to discover a new era, to check what we achieved actually and what we have to do in the future.
Sure.
Thank you. Dr. Abad, are there any more questions?
Are there any particular request from India, or just this is the only oxygen? And is there any other request from Indian side?
Well, it's actually from their ambassadors or envoy, the Indian ambassadors in the whole world, communicate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and there was request, of course, of oxygen. They focus on the liquid medical oxygen and oxygen concentrators, and also remdesivir and some medicine. Unfortunately, it's very rare in Kuwait, that medicine, the remdesivir or other actually tablets, or let's say medicine. So that's why we focus on what we have, which is the oxygen, either oxygen cylinders, oxygen, liquid oxygen, or even the oxygen concentrators and other materials.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Thank you. Thank you, Soham.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Jasem Ibrahim JM Al Najem, Ambassador of Kuwait to India, for being here with us and delivering the keynote address and answering all the questions. It's a real honor and pleasure to have you among us. Let me also thank the other distinguished speakers at this roundtable, Ambassador Rajapura Ghanashyam, Dr. Meena Singh Roy, Dr. Wail Awad, Professor A.K. Pasha. Thank you so much for joining us, and I thank you all.